Have you ever been through the absolute nightmare of chatting with someone interesting, and then suddenly a deadly silence takes over the room while your mind goes completely blank, with no idea what to say next? Most people believe the great myth that being good at conversation means you've got to be a born speaker or have an endless list of topics memorized. The counterintuitive truth is that trying to dream up topics out of thin air is exactly what kills your charisma, stone dead, and turns any chat into a boring interrogation. Dark psychology reveals that the secret behind the world's most magnetic communicators isn't knowing what to say, but using the cold reading method to pull out endless topics just by observing the other person. Why keep making a fool of yourself on dates or in meetings, when you can learn in just a few minutes how to read anyone's mind and have them completely captivated by you, without lifting a finger? Topic 1. Observation over interrogation, replacing questions with cold statements. You know how it goes. Most people make the fatal mistake of turning a good chat into a proper police interrogation. They fire off one cliché question after another, like, so what do you do for a living? Or where are you from? Then, creating a heavy, dead, boring atmosphere. The great secret of the cold reader is swapping that barrage of questions for simple, direct observational statements. Instead of asking someone's profession in a pub in London, the clever observer prefers to say something like, you've got the look of someone who works in something creative, but absolutely can't stand rules. This subtle shift in tone works like instant psychological magic, because it sparks the other person's natural curiosity and practically forces them to explain themselves. To really master the art of reading people and understanding the human mind, it's well worth diving into classic books like O Corpo Falar by Pierre Wald, or the fascinating A Linguicna das Emoques by Paul Ekman. When someone hears a statement about themselves, their instinctive reaction isn't to give a one-word answer, but to smile, deny it, or confirm it with a detailed story about their own life. Once you've mastered using these observational lines day to day, you'll realize you never need to force a topic again. It's a genuinely freeing feeling watching the other person open up like a book, while the conversation flows nice and easy, with none of that awkward tension. That said, to make these observations feel like frighteningly accurate, deep guesses, there's an even more refined mental trick you need to add to your social toolkit. Topic 2. The Barnum hook, using universal statements that feel deeply personal. Right, so the big trick used by the best communicators and mentalists in the world lies in the famous Barnum effect, a powerful and elegant psychological tool. This tactic involves using universal phrases that sound like deeply personal revelations, but which actually apply to pretty much any human being on the planet. For example, saying in a calm tone something like, you come across so relaxed on the outside, but I bet your mind never stops for a single second, makes the other person feel an instant connection, as if you've known them for years. This kind of intuitive reading creates instant social magnetism and makes sure your presence sticks in people's minds for a long time. If you want to go deeper into the psychology of attraction and persuasive communication, reading the classic How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie and The Brilliant Influence by Robert Cialdini are essential steps to understanding how to touch people's ego and emotions the right way. When you hit the nail on the head with a statement about the contradictions in someone's life, they stop being defensive and start seeing you as a genuine confidant. It's fascinating how this psychological hook opens doors that seemed firmly locked in everyday interactions. That awkward silence simply vanishes, replaced by a rich exchange where the other person does all the heavy lifting, talking and opening up about their feelings. However, to stop relying on generic phrases alone and make your cold reading truly razor sharp, the next step means learning to squeeze endless material out of small visual and sensory details. Topic 3. Sensory anchoring, extracting infinite topics from visual clues. That's right, your surroundings and the small details of the other person's body are hidden goldmines just waiting to be tapped into. The average communicator sits there racking their brain trying to invent wild topics, while the cold reader uses sensory anchoring to pick up on visual clues straight away. Whether it's the way someone holds their glass, the choice of a vintage watch, a flashy ring, or even the brisk pace they walk at, everything tells a ready-made story just waiting for a touch of intuition. Mastering this sharp perception means training your eye to notice what most people miss entirely in the rush of everyday life. To sharpen this analytical skill worthy of a proper social detective, it's well worth studying the observation techniques laid out in The Like Switch by Jack Schafer and the fantastic What Everybody Is Saying by Joan Navarro. By noticing, say, a distinctive accessory and saying that ring looks like it's got a proper travel story behind it, you activate the person's emotional memory without any effort at all. This ability to anchor the conversation in the real world makes your capacity to keep the chat going pretty much bottomless. Wherever you are, you stop being a mere bystander in the interaction and start steering the conversation with impressive, captivating fluidity. But to tie this whole mechanism together and make sure the conversation never dies halfway through, you need to master the art of linking their answer to a fresh cycle of ongoing curiosity. Topic 4. The infinite echo loop, turning answers into continuous curiosity. The real trick to never letting a conversation die is creating an endless cycle of curiosity through emotional echo, instead of simply hearing a reply and jumping to a completely different subject. The clever communicator captures the essence of what the person said, validates the feeling behind it, and returns it with a fresh cold reading. If someone says they've had a knackering day at work, don't reply by banging on about your own day. Come back with something like, "I get the feeling you carry more responsibility than your boss even realizes." This technique of continuous reflection makes the other person feel genuinely understood and heard in a way they rarely are in everyday life. Great masters of empathy and negotiation, like Chris Voss in his renowned book Never Split the Difference, show how mirroring and labeling other people's emotions builds unbreakable bonds of trust within minutes. When you apply this loop naturally, the conversation takes on a rhythm of its own, where a single line unfolds into hours of pleasant chat, without you ever having to rack your brain for what to say next. When you bring together sharp observation, universal hooks, and the infinite echo loop, the fear of freezing up in public disappears from your vocabulary for good. You end up mastering the social dynamic with calm, effortless elegance, becoming the most fascinating person in the room almost without anyone noticing. And with all this practical know-how in hand, we're ready to take the next step and tie the whole thing together into a truly unforgettable experience. Conclusion: carrying on freezing up in conversations and accepting that awkward silence as an inevitable fate is a choice that costs you dearly, both socially and professionally. You weren't born to be the invisible one in the group, nor to head home frustrated, stewing over the lack of things to say at an important meetup. The tools of cold reading aren't magic tricks to deceive others, they're powerful keys to human psychology that let you connect for real, read the room, and take charge of any conversation with rock-solid charisma. Why keep acting like a dull interrogator when you have the power to become the most fascinating, intuitive person in the room? Have a think about this. If you keep using the same tired old questions and holding on to that insecure attitude, where will your connections and your confidence be a year from now? Are you going to keep letting brilliant opportunities slip through your fingers because you're scared to speak up? Or are you ready to start using cold observation today and never run out of things to say again? The art of conversation doesn't belong to those who shout the loudest, but to those who know how to observe the details and touch people's hearts with pinpoint precision. The decision to turn the tables and master your social magnetism is entirely yours. But know this: the depth of your connections depends on the value you bring with every word. If you're determined to banish awkward silence for good, want to keep growing your mastery of persuasion, and fancy learning the most advanced tactics in social intelligence, subscribe to the channel right now and turn on all the notifications. By joining our community today, you'll get constant access to the best guides on magnetic communication, behavioral reading, and personal development. Don't just keep this knowledge in theory. Put your first observational line into practice in your very next conversation. Transform your interactions, and we'll see you in the next video.